Okay, so we are live, and once again, a big hi to the entire training community and all the fans of our guest speaker this evening. And he is none other than Mr. Ganesh Dalvi, a certified process facilitator. So, for many, I'm sure that you don't really need an introduction, but for the few who are kind of seeing you for the first time, how would you introduce yourself in less than 15 words?
Oh, um, so does it need to be in one sentence, or I can use different
The
words?
way you'd like to do it.
Okay, so I would call myself a learner more than a trainer because I like to learn. That's how I've grown.
Mhm.
Who believes in conducting serious learnings or engaging in serious learnings the fun way. I guess that largely would sum me up, and that's how I guess people would know me. Those who know me.
All right, great. So this is our guest speaker for the evening at Conversations That Impact, Ganesh Dalvi. Uh, the reason I asked him to introduce himself because, of course, there's always some novelty that is expected out of Ganesh, and he never falls short of it. So, on this note, before we move ahead, once again, I would request all of you to please like, share, create watch parties because this evening they're going to have a ball of a time. The
Yes.
conversation that we're going to have, the learnings that we're going to have, I'm sure is going to be awesome. Why awesome? Because but just to let you know, in fact, we share the same alma mater, all right?
Yeah.
And Ganesh is my senior. So it's going to be fun for those who don't know. But
So
yes, overall, they're going to have a lot of fun and they're
So
going to
you
learn.
so you have an opportunity to rag me, Elroy, now, which you couldn't do it in college.
So let's make the best of it over the
Uh,
next hour. And so don't forget, watch parties. Please make sure that you set it up. And don't forget to tag a trainer friend because that's important. These conversations are held especially for you. So make sure that you can add value by spreading these videos. So on that note, welcome once again, Ganesh. And
Thank
I
you so
guess
much.
we
Thank you so
are
much.
all set to begin.
Yes,
Okay.
all set to go.
So my first question, and that starts off from the way you introduced yourself. How do you manage humor and learning? So serious learning the fun way. That's your tagline. How do you manage that?
I think it is something that's innate in me. Okay, I am. I mean, I realized humor is something that that comes very naturally to me, and I started using that in trainings, and I see quite a few
Mhm.
trainers prefer to have a serious kind of a session. I guess I got inspired by the sessions that used to happen in McDonald's, which were totally fun and a
Mhm.
lot of craziness used to happen. But then the learnings at the end of the day were superb, right? So that is what
Mhm.
I thought. That is, I guess, that's where I started off, and that has been one of the reasons.
Mhm.
Secondly, so in McDonald's, there are some learning principles that we had. So one of them
Mhm.
is people learn best in a fun environment, and
Mhm. That's
so I
true.
try to maintain that. So I think it's very easy to have that balance of fun and serious learning, provided what you're doing, what the participants expect. And I have done sessions right from the front line all the way till maybe VPs and CEOs and outbound. I mean, you have been a part of it, and you have seen the kind of dhamal we used to have,
Mhm.
and end of the day, the kind of learnings that used to emerge. So I think
Mhm.
having fun, I guess, breaks the monotony of a session. So you see people normally coming area training hai, to matlab, it's boring PPTs hoga, and I love to see
Mhm.
that change in their thought process that training can be fun and it can be done a different.
Great. So you've been a part of both the corporate, okay, you've been an employee, as well as you've tried, not tried, I would say, you're successfully into the phase of freelancing. So tell me one thing, which side do you feel gives you a greater opportunity to be creative?
Okay. So let's So let's talk about creativity first. Okay, uh, it's a very interesting term, and I hear people say, I'm not creative, or corporate job will not give permission for creativity. I don't think that's possible. So
Mhm.
right from the time when I was working, um, something like putting up a monthly meeting, okay, that I would use my creativity in there. So one meeting I started off when the time Munna Bhai MBBS had released, and I'd actually
Mhm.
put up a post in that language ki mamu meeting mein aane ka hai and all, and that was a riot and people had loved it, right? So I've been using that in my corporate life also. The way a invite for a meeting would go on,
Mhm.
uh, and I so uh, it's a myth that corporate job curtails your creativity. Creativity can be found anywhere in anything that you do. The way you send out an invite, the way you make a participant
Mhm.
guide, the way you design your programs, the way you get people to introduce yourself. I think it's only about looking at how can you do things in a different way. So
Okay. So if you had to, define creativity, how would you define it? I mean, you've given examples, but what exactly is creativity to you? Do you always have to be wacky and crazy? I mean, what is creativity?
I guess creativity is something which is there in every individual, right?
Okay.
So, for example, Elroy, you go out for a drink with your friends and you don't want your wife to know. You will come with
Mm-hmm.
you will come up with a very creative excuse. Ganesh का birthday था, उसने दो
Mm-hmm.
पैक पिला दिया. That's creativity. Uh,
Yeah.
I see my kids, 5-year-old, the way they kind of build stories to hide what they've done. That's creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I think everybody has got creativity in them,
Okay.
and I guess all it needs is a trigger to bring that out. I've seen it in my participants also who claim that, oh, we are not creative. I'm a finance guy. I can only see straight lines. And towards the end of the session, they have come up with such wonderful stories when we did facilitative storytelling, or the way they now started doodling. There is one participant, I mean, she's actually conducting creativity workshops for kids. And when she had attended my classroom session idea, she was claiming
Mm-hmm.
that I am not a creative person, right? So I guess everybody has creativity in them. It's all about you discovering them. And creativity is not only about fine arts, or it's not only about being able to doodle or anything.
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that's something which can be used everywhere. I personally, uh, I don't like routine stuff. Okay, I get
Okay.
bored very easily. My attention span is very short. So to keep
Mm-hmm.
things going, I have to look at doing things in a different way. And I guess that's when that creativity comes into picture. So rather than putting up a so my first workshop I was on facilitative storytelling, and that's how that Vela thought came in. And the invite was, if you don't have anything better to do, come and join this workshop. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and believe me, that got good response. You were like, I mean, it was something different. What's going to happen? There was the first workshop which I'd done, and it was Eid. I remember, and post that workshop, we had gone to Asif's place for biryani,
Mm-hmm.
and the response was pretty good. And that kind of reinforced the fact that yes, you need to do something different to stand out. So
So while you're saying that everybody has creativity in them, I'm sure they have with the kind of excuses that we generate. Yes, it's a good observation. But for those who actually feel कि यार जिंदगी बहुत रुखी सुखी है, I kind of do technical trainings and all that. So I don't really have much space where I can actually get creative. So for those kind of trainers, do you think that creativity can be learned? Do they need to learn, or they just need to discover it within themselves?
they need to discover it. I honestly, it is I cannot train people to be creative. Okay, once they have identified their creativity, they can enhance it.
Okay.
Okay, they can enhance a particular skill to explore that creativity. So a skill can be taught. Okay, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
creativity is something which is innate. People are born with it. Okay, and the ones who keep sharpening it, they are able to discover it faster. And then people who don't tend to explore it, or they're okay with whatever they're doing, they end up saying that, yeah, I'm not creative.
Okay. So, do you have a kind of creativity regime or something like that you do every morning? Get up at 4, 5 o'clock, and
I get up at 4 5 o'clock, and then I come with an amazing creative excuse कि आज मेरे को workout क्यों नहीं करना है.
uh-huh.
And then I go to sleep. Creative. The biggest thing about creativity is there's no structure, there's no schedule, there's no regime. Okay? I
Mm-hmm.
guess I'm at my creative best when I'm not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
So when I realized when I was to travel, when I was working, when I was to wait after check-in at the airports, the my one-liners used to come back to back.
Hmm.
Right. So I think in my case personally, my creativity is the best either when I'm in too much of stress, there's work pressure and I need to deliver things and I need to do it differently, or when I'm not doing anything. So these are the
Okay.
two extremes where my creativity is at the highest.
Okay. So, of course, what they also say is that creativity is at best when your mind is at peace.
Yes.
So, I guess you are at peace at both the polars.
Yes, because when it's work related pressure, obviously
Mm-hmm.
I am at my best because training is something that I love doing, and if there is work coming in, of course, while physically, mentally you're drained out, your spirit is at its uh, utmost high. Similarly, when you're not doing anything, when you're relaxing, again you are at peace. So I guess that's where that creativity kida or the creativity bug comes in.
Okay. So now this being the creative part of it, uh, let's look at the other side of it, and that is your facilitative side. Okay. And there is one very important question, which is the base of everything. Uh, this is something that I guess we generally ask because we generally have our own understanding of the term. What is training and what is facilitation? Can they be interchangeably used?
Okay, good. Yeah. मतलब, paisa vasool question. So training is when you're using content
Okay.
to okay when you're training people on a content or a concept or an idea. Facilitation is where you are trying to uh, trigger people's thought process, or you're being an anchor. You're being the role of an anchor or a catalyst to help people come up with their ideas, with their thoughts, with their solutions, right? So these are the two
Mhm.
extreme ends of maybe an axis. Yeah, the training environment, which
Okay.
is very content heavy, and there is facilitation, which is very process heavy, right? And between that, there is something which we very often use, which is facilitative training, where I use a process from facilitation, and then I to deliver a content. Okay, and largely we
Hmm.
use that and to create that engagement, to create that inclusiveness, to create that fun. And I believe each of it has its own purpose, right? uh, I don't think facilitation is above training, or it is a substitute for training. Okay, where training is required, you have to
Mhm.
train people. Now, for example, I cannot use facilitation when I have to train people on how to use Zoom.
Hmm.
Yeah, there I have to wear a trainer hat. But when I am conducting a session on Zoom about on maybe I'm conducting a meeting or I'm facilitating a meeting, that is where I can use facilitation to help
Hmm.
people explore the different features of Zoom. So yes, training and
Okay.
facilitation are very different, and each has its own pros and cons. I mean, and I use both. I use training, I use facilitation, and I see a lot of people they like being called facilitators than trainers. So one question that I usually get asked is, how do I tell my client that it is facilitation or is it training? Client would not know. Or another question is, should I be a facilitator or a trainer? So my answer to this is, client is not paying me to play the role of a facilitator or a trainer. The
Mm-hmm.
client is paying me to help him achieve his outcomes or help solve his problems. I need to decide what role do I need to be in. And a lot of times in a session, we keep toggling between a trainer and a facilitator. Okay. What
Okay.
is important is, I should be aware of what role am I playing. Am I playing the role of a trainer, or is the need to be a trainer, or is the need to be a facilitator? Then we need to switch roles accordingly.
Okay. So, but is it very easy? Because the way I understand it is, one has to be like, you need to be content neutral, wherein you need to have a lot of control over your involvement in the entire session, while training actually demands that you are the source of content and information. So is it really easy to toggle between the two?
Uh, Initially, it wasn't. We had to really be mindful of whether we are not slipping into a trainer role when we're facilitating, or there are times when I have made mistakes in a session where I've got into facilitator mode where the training was required. But I think over a period of time, once you start practicing, once you revisit the learnings that I've learned, in the journey of being a facilitator, you start. So just to go back, I remember a post by no be do,
Hmm.
no do be, right?
Hmm.
So I think practice is where you will go from knowing what is facilitation to doing it mindfully. So there I remember we used to use an anchor. So I used to always hold a marker pen in my hand to remind me
Hmm.
that, yeah, I need to facilitate. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then slowly, once you're practicing things, then you get into the being stage where now, in fact, a lot of times I feel that I need to be a trainer, and now facilitation is coming very naturally to me. So for me
Okay.
now, and most of the facilitators, I guess, who are practicing facilitation or who are passionate in facilitation, find it a challenge getting into the trainer role more than getting into the facilitator role.
Hmm. All right. So if you had to kind of suggest, or if you had to guide a new entrant into this area of facilitation, what would you suggest are the kind of qualities that that person requires to have?
All right. So, based on my interactions with maybe my assessors or the people whom I look up to as amazing facilitators, one quality that is required is being humble. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen facilitators who have they are in the Hall of Fame of IAF with maybe about 30-35 years of work experience, but the way their groundedness is commendable. Um, that's one. You need to be grounded. Okay,
Hmm.
you need to be a learner. That's one very important quality that a facilitator needs to have. uh, Patience is another quality that is extremely required, because in a facilitative session and in a pure facilitation where we are actually helping an organization build their strategies or different stakeholders coming together to form the vision, there are chances of people not agreeing to what you're saying. There are chances of people
Hmm.
having their own agenda when they come for a session. How do you deal with them? In
True.
training, it is very easy. You set down ground rules and say, boss, you follow karna padega. I really don't care. In a facilitative session, we cannot do that. You have to be
Mm-hmm.
patient. You have to listen to each and every participant, ensure that they are feeling heard, they are valued. So patience definitely is required. um, Third very important thing is, at least in a session, you need to be mindful of what's happening in the session. You have to be
Mm-hmm.
aware of people's emotions, people's mood. While in facilitation, we believe that silence is also participation. But if
Mm-hmm.
somebody is not contributing, I would go up to the person and ask that person, what is bothering you? Can I
Hmm.
do something that can make things better for you? Right? Uh, another important aspect of facilitative skills would be listening and understanding. So listening, understanding, and empathy. These again are
Mhm.
very important attributes that a facilitator needs to have. Neutrality. Okay, so
Mhm.
neutrality has, there is a lot of myths about being content neutral, or when we talk about neutrality, because content neutral is I will not answer any question. Okay, that's
Mhm.
not how it is. That's something that I discovered over a period of time. Neutrality is when you are not making judgments about an individual.
Okay.
Okay, I should not be judged just because a person is quiet doesn't mean he doesn't know something or he's
Mhm.
not interested. Okay, as trainers, we tend to pass this judgment very easily. Somebody is talking too much, that means he's over smart.
Hmm.
Yeah. Somebody might be a little sarcastic, or somebody came in late, we tag him as unprofessional.
True.
As a facilitator, I need to be very mindful that I'm not getting into that zone. Yeah. So that is again extremely important. While you would
Mhm.
evaluate, you would assess people, you don't get into the judgment mode. So what we do is, and I think we've learned this when we do assessment centers also, right? We just assess, we just observe a behavior and we assess it. We don't really get into the judgment mode. So I think
True.
similar thing applies in facilitation also, where the judgment thing needs to be kept aside, right? You don't bring your own world views, you don't bring your own concepts, you don't bring your own perceptions about certain things.
Mhm.
So that is, so these are the few things that I would look at when somebody wants to uh, move ahead as a facilitator. Besides, of course, they need to continuously keep upgrading themselves, learn new processes. Okay, the more they learn, the more they read, I think they'll be able to, and yes, keep experimenting rather than just doing run of the mill things.
Do you like reading, Ganesh?
I love to read, but I love to read fiction. I love to read
Okay.
thrillers. So I am not so much of a person who would read management books or self-help books. And I think I'm, I guess, one of the uh, trainers who's very contrary to our of fraternity, where reading is very important. But then I derive a lot of learnings from the books that I read. I think
Mhm.
so. I largely like to read books around thrillers, on espionage. And there is so much to learn even from there. So there are so many processes that I've designed reading books. So the
Okay.
facilitative storytelling, structured fluid, uh, is inspired from a novel where a story is told and then there are three endings to that story, and then the reader
Mhm.
chooses what appeals to them.
Okay.
So yes, if I'm working on a workshop and there's a specific model or a structure that the client requires, that is when I would probably pick up a management book or a self-help book.
Okay. So I guess
Yes.
here,
Uh,
want to say something?
yes. Think my reading comes from spending time with people.
Okay.
More than the books, I guess talking to people, understanding them, observing them, has helped me develop immensely than probably any book would have done so.
So this is so much in line with the post I'd written this morning, which actually says that conversations can be a great learning point, but it's important that you should want to learn from the conversation. So
Absolutely.
I also believe that not necessarily you need to read, but you need to have exposure to various sources of learning. So I guess that's people, that's books, that's movies, that's absolutely anything as long as you can derive and make sense out of it. So
Yes. So that learning hat is extremely, like we talk about now. I see a lot of webinars happening and discussions happening around strategy or having a different business proposition. I mean, lockdown started, and 15 days down the line, the chartwala near my building, who was, he started delivering vegetables. So, I mean, I was like, he's adapted to things and he's doing pretty well. He started delivery also. So, you can learn from everybody. I think I learn a lot from my kids.
mhm. So if I had to look at it, see, I've known you for nearly 6 to 8 years now. Uh, so you started off as a trainer, you moved, you accepted facilitation, you ended up doing a CPF. How has this helped you, or how has this journey evolved? And what do you say that now as a CPF, how different are you from the Ganesh of maybe 2008 to 10?
Okay, so there I think I was one thing that CPF. Okay, so let me start off. Okay, and I think I'll always be grateful to ITC for broadening my horizon. Okay, till that time I was like, okay, I know things and this is how things happen. It's only when I got into AOT and then ITCs when I met a lot of people, and that's how I got introduced to IAF. So CPF has definitely helped me evolve as an individual in terms of maturity, in terms of working towards the design bit, in terms of looking at what can be done differently, like doing a very detailed need identification, doing a very detailed stakeholder contracting, which are essentials in a facilitative session, and they needed. I think my biggest learning during my CPF journey was from my assessor, Tom Shores, and the best thing is he never taught me anything.
Okay.
Yeah, but the kind of questions that he used to ask, his demeanor is to be so humble. I mean, imagine he is my assessor. He's supposed to assess me. His mail used to be, "May I request a meeting at so and so time?" And I was like, "Boss, मेरा certification आपके हाथ में. You tell me I want to have a meeting because he's based in Australia." Okay. So I think my biggest learning from CPF has been um, the humility that these guys show. Yeah, when if Tom is standing next to you, you wouldn't even give him a second look. But then the moment he would start talking, and the moment he would start talking about facilitation, you would be awestruck. So I guess that has been my biggest learning as a CPF, and listening to people in the classroom, being mindful of what's happening around. I think a lot of these things were definitely came in with my first organization, McDonald's, where while we were not really facilitating, but these things were definitely taken care of. But yes, being a CPF has definitely broadened my horizon in terms of understanding people a little better.
Okay. All right. So now that you mentioned your CPF assessor and all that, uh, whose work in the facilitation space do you really admire, India or international?
Oh, there are a lot of people. So Tom is one definitely. I really admire his work, the way he assesses. Lawrence Philbrook is another amazing person. Recently, we had a con call for the
Yeah.
global mentoring, IAF global mentoring orientation, and what was amazing was I'd met Larry in 2015, I guess. 15, yeah, 15 and 16 when I did my CPF.
Okay.
Then there's another lady called Kimberly. Then Noel is another person. And then there was no interaction with them for all these years. Interestingly, they all remembered me. And I actually told them, we met in India. You had been there for a session. And Larry's like, yes, Ganesh, I remember you. We had met at that place called Santa Cruz. Okay, so and I was like, yeah, matlab, so and he did a session, and so you can imagine the kind of attention they pay to every individual. Yeah. Uh, so these are there in India. There are some amazing people who are doing amazing work. Vinay is one. Jawad is one. There is Ajit. There is Yatin. There's Sham, Shekhar. Again, these are few people who I really admire for their work, and I am really grateful to them because I've learned a lot from them. Okay, during the sessions, during my CPF journey, they have been very helpful. And I guess IF overall is a community where we believe in helping each other. So these are the few
Okay.
people who I really, how can I forget Dr. Tyagi, uh, one person who I really idolize and who I really admire because
Hmm.
so my Vela thought is inspired by Dr. Tyagi because I feel
Okay.
I attended his session and 3 hours we were in splits. We were laughing. We were almost, we thankfully we did not fall off our chairs. And after 3 hours, I've realized that I've learned so much. He just did about 3 to 4 processes, but I'd learned immensely for him. And again, another very grounded soul, no airs of superiority, amazing person. So
Mhm.
and a real giver. So he's another person who I really admire, and I try to evaluate few things that he mentioned, which is make use of whatever resources are available. That's something that I try to always do in my sessions. Second thing was something which I found very interesting. Don't go prepared in a session.
Mhm.
And I was like, how is that possible? But then I realized what he meant was whatever preparation that you need to do before a session, right? So keep practicing on a regular basis so that you don't have to you don't have to prepare when you're going in a session because in a facilitative session it is so unstructured, anything can happen.
True.
Yeah? So so yeah, these are the few people who I really admire and look up to.
So now taking the facilitation cue, all thanks to our global situation right now, what is the difference between offline facilitation and online facilitation? Do you see a kind of difference in the kind of level of engagement between the participants, or is there a different strategy that you're supposed to adopt?
Mm, I was one person I used to hate virtual trainings.
Uh-huh.
So I remember from 2017 till now, every month there used to be a webinar done by a global facilitator, and Narsi used to very religiously organize them. I have
Hmm.
not attended a single one
Hmm.
purely because I used to feel it's going to be boring. I mean somehow I did not have that inclination to attend a webinar. But then when this um, COVID started and
Mhm.
we were confined to our homes, I was supposed to do a session on for the IF India Vision. So
Mhm.
all CPFs were doing a presentation. I had some issues with my Wi-Fi, so I thought, okay, let me do it on WhatsApp. And the topic that I chose was doing the vision for IF India Vision 2025.
Mhm.
And we started planning, and then I said, okay, I'll do WhatsApp in hour. And then the thought came of having 4 different groups and using that as breakout rooms, the
Mhm.
way it is used in Zoom. And it really worked very well. And we actually using that, whatever was the harvest that we did in
Hmm.
the session, we're using that to kind of plan for the next 5 years. And that kind of gave me the confidence that it's all here,
Hmm.
okay, virtual and real, and we can definitely have a good kind of engagement. Obviously I'll still be always game for the classroom sessions where that one-on-one connect is extremely important, but we can
Mhm.
definitely have a good amount of engagement, involvement, fun when we are doing sessions virtually also. And what I'm
Okay.
actually doing is I'm converting all the classroom sessions, activities, games, storytelling, processes virtually. What can be done differently? What uh, mm, uh, methodology needs to be adapted? There are different apps, tools that are there which can be blended with your main app, and I think that maybe not the same, but definitely magic can be created virtually also. And when I was thinking about it, what came to mind, the magic is not the platform. The
Mhm.
magic is facilitation, right? So
True.
irrespective of whatever platform that is available, are you able to engage participants? Are you able to help them come up with certain ideas, or are you facilitating their learning? Are you understanding their needs and requirement? Are you ensuring that everybody is feeling inclusive? I guess if you're doing that, your sessions will definitely be engaging. You don't need to really have some funky games or amazing props to make a session engaging, Elroy. I think it's all about how are you able to connect with your audience, and how are they able to, what are you doing, what efforts are you taking for them to connect with you. I think if you've done that,
All right.
uh, virtual sessions can also be as engaging as a classroom session.
So now many trainers, of course, we've had our content and the modules created while we were during offline, but now suddenly we've had to move online. Uh, could you kind of direct as to, can the same module be used even online, or what should the trainer be mindful of when he or she is converting a module from the offline for the online?
All right. So one structure that I have designed is optic. Okay.
Okay.
So one, the trainer needs to be mindful of is the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What are you trying to achieve at the end of the session? Um, Second is participants. Okay, the number of participants, where are they seated? Are they going to be in the office? Are they going to be at home? So that is the second thing that I would look at. How many participants are there? What is the background? Third is how much time do I have for a session?
Hmm.
Fourth is the infrastructure. Is Zoom available? If it's a client,
Hmm.
largely they prefer corporates. They prefer Microsoft Teams. So then, how can I use that platform?
Hmm.
Okay, is bandwidth available? Will everybody able to use breakout rooms? Will everybody be able to? From a lot of times there is a restriction when you're using an official laptop, right? There are firewalls. So will they be able to
Hmm.
log on to another app, say like a Miro or a Mural? That is where the infrastructure would come in. And the
Hmm.
fifth thing, C, is the cost. So there are a lot of virtual platforms which I was exploring. Say Remo Room is there. But then when I look at the cost, they're quite expensive. Now I have to look at. I mean, there's no harm in getting them. But then will it justify my investment? I'm investing say 3,500, 4,000 on a monthly basis. Will I be doing sessions at that level that I'll be able to recover that cost? Right. So
True.
these are the 5 things that I would want the trainers to look at when they are moving from a classroom to facilitation. Again, what you are doing in classroom will not work in a virtual platform. You have
Okay.
to look at it differently. You have to think differently. Explore platforms. I've been spending nights just exploring various platforms and then looking at the properties, and then I send out a link to my participants that explore this and see what are you able to come up with. And I think this is really helping me in terms of converting the classroom models to virtual. In fact, we are doing a trainer program for a client which was supposed to be classroom, and we did
Hmm.
one session with for them, which is where the Saksham folks was
Hmm.
born, and we converted the entire classroom modules to virtual, modifying the activities. So just to give you an example, uh, you would be aware of Gypsy flip charts, right?
Yes.
We remove the flip charts. Now, when I do it virtually,
Hmm.
obviously I cannot move the flip charts. So what I do is I keep the group constant. I allot one person as the anchor, and that person moves with his whiteboard on Zoom.
Okay.
So all the insights are coming there. Okay, so that is
Hmm.
how, that is an example of how I've modified the classroom thing to virtual thing. So similarly, rule of 35, I've modified it to come on virtual. Ambassadorial
Hmm.
sharing is being done virtually. Speed dating, my favorite, we have modified it to smart dating, and we using it virtually. So I think everything is possible, Elroy. I just need to, again, coming back to the thing, Soj badlo. That's about it.
So
And
I
yes,
remember.
a lot of clients do tell, since it's virtual, why are you charging? You should charge less. Don't do that. I think, in fact, in virtual, you need to make in more efforts, right?
Okay.
So platform can be anything. Whatever that you would are charging in a classroom session, the pricing can still be the same. It's all about how you talk to the client and how do you put it across to them.
It's the value at the end of it, what you are
Absolutely,
offering.
absolutely. And you should be able to show that value to them.
So I remember in around 2015, I had done train the facilitator program with Mr. Yatin
Yatin.
Bharat. And at that point of time, there was one line that actually stuck, that facilitation, it can be quite simple. It's all about diverging and converging.
Converging.
Now, while this sounds very nice for a new trainer, okay, is it really that simple to simply diverge and converge with suggestions, or you really have to rack your brains, or how do you create a process? Can you throw some light on that? How easy or how difficult is it to create a process?
Okay, Roy, honestly speaking, so uh, divergence and convergence happens all the time. Let me give you an
Hmm.
example. Uh, so when we were planning this talk, okay, you shared some questions, right?
Hmm.
The first divergence that happened was in your mind. You would have had so many questions.
Hmm.
Out of that, you selected a few. Okay, so divergence and
Hmm.
then convergence happened. Then you send it to me. Then what I did, I filtered it. That Elroy, are we going in sync with the topic? What can work? The conversation that we had today afternoon. So
Hmm.
there's a filter that was applied, right? And then we came up again with a list of questions which we felt will be helpful and which will help in achieving the outcome of this conversation. And this is what facilitation is all about.
Okay.
Yeah. So outcome, what
Mm-hmm.
filter will you apply when you are converging, and are you allowing the divergence to happen?
Hmm.
So while I mean I know I'm making it sound very simple, but then facilitation is again all about simplicity. We don't need fancy tools. We don't need the sticky wall. We don't need those colored papers or anything when you're facilitating a conversation. And it's all about listening, asking the right questions, which will help a group think and then elicit the information from them. That's what facilitation is all about.
So I guess, as you had mentioned earlier, that it's all about using the resources that you have. So make the best of what you have, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Right? So, but is there any place where a trainer or a facilitator who's getting into this space can update themselves on various processes?
So IF, I guess, is, I mean, no, not I guess. The
Mm-hmm.
place where I learned is IF, which
Mm-hmm.
is, I guess, one of the most sharing and giving community that I've ever come across. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so there are events that keep happening on a monthly basis. There is a repository that is available where you can, and that nothing is copyrighted there per se. Anybody can
Okay.
use the processes that are available there, and they can use it freely. Yeah, there are people who are available to guide. Right? So we have a formal mentoring program, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm a part of. That. Besides that, there are CPFs who are always willing to help, to guide, to show what the right way is. I guess that is one way, that is the best platform that people can run, people can learn. At least when that is how we learn facilitation. So me, Yatin, Sham, Shekhar,
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't have any structured workshops. Now there are a lot of workshops that also keep happening. So I do a workshop. Yatin has been doing classroom session workshops. Sham does workshops. Ajit does certain workshops, and these workshops are really good. Uh,
Hmm.
I would say you don't have to really be attend my workshop only. Uh, any of the workshops that are done by these people would add a value to the participant, because these are the people that I have learned from. Yeah, and I have no complaints. I've learned a lot from them.
Hmm.
So these are some areas that these are some workshops that they can look at. One book that I would recommend people to read when they want to start off their facilitation journey would be the Spot On Facilitation by Mr. Prabhu Naidu.
Okay.
It's a very simple book written in a very simple way, and I think it explains facilitation beautifully. I had read that book just before my CPF, and it had really helped me understand small bits and pieces about facilitation, which maybe I had not picked up when I used to attend the learning sessions. And very importantly, you need to keep practicing. So um,
Mhm.
that is what will. So you cannot learn facilitation by watching videos. You have to do things. You have to see things being done. Only then you'll be able to understand what are the nitty-gritties of being a facilitator. So videos will just tell you the no. When you are attending a session, you would get to know the do. But when you do it yourself is when you would understand what does it take to being a facilitator. And it's a wonderful journey. I
Mhm.
mean, I've enjoyed the last 6 years. A lot of fun.
So I think so that's applicable in all fields wherein hoarding information doesn't really help unless you actually apply it and see how it works for yourself, because every person has a different way of perceiving that kind of the understood information. So I guess unless you apply it, there is no way in saying that, okay, because Ganesh did it, is going to be successful. Can I pull it off? Is it applicable to me? Am I convinced with it? I guess that also has a very strong bearing on the learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you can always reach out to me or any other CPFs. We'll be happy to kind of handhold you, because see, what I've realized is when I'm having this conversation with people who want to learn facilitation, I end up learning a lot
Mhm.
of things. Okay, so my creative
True.
Gita starts working. Okay, how can I do it differently? Can I use this process? Can I use this question? Can I use this tool?
Mhm.
So that is how I keep developing or modifying my processes. So I guess it works two way, at least for me.
Great. So now for a more general question, this is something that was always on my mind, and I guess this is a good opportunity for me to ask. Uh, from the time that I've known you, you were working somewhere, you switched over, you got into freelancing,
Hmm.
you again took a conscious decision to move back into corporate, and then after a while, you came back into freelancing and you co-created or you created your own organization once again with a different mission altogether. So what was your thought process behind the in and out of corporate?
Okay, so when I first got into freelancing, okay, uh, it was more on impulse. I mean,
Okay.
and I like to call that as so when people jump into an entrepreneurial role, whereas freelancing, I call them as Abhimanyu. Okay,
Okay.
so Abhimanyu only knew how to get into the Chakravyu, okay, which he had heard. So half information.
Uh-huh.
I was like an Abhimanyu that time. Okay, I got to know. I spoke to a few trainers. Uh, One trainer gave me some rosy figures. You know, this is what he makes on a monthly basis. And I was like, wow, yaar, itna kamata hai, maybe karega. And I jumped into it without any plan, without any backup, without any guidance. And I realized that, and this was way back in 2012. So that time again, social media was not. I mean, there's hardly any social media, in fact. So we didn't really know anything. I got in there, and the only thing that made me survive for 5 years was my connect with people and the skills that I'd learned. But then, of course, the Abhimanyu had to die because you can't survive the Chakravyu of entrepreneurship unless and until you know all the skills, you know all the weapons, you are a master in everything to break that Chakravyu of entrepreneurship, you know, to succeed in there. So for that, you need to be a Krishna or an Arjun or a Bhishma or a Dronacharya or a Kripacharya. Rishi Nanda, if you're listening, please correct me if I'm using the right the right words.
I was going to say
Um,
that. I wish Rishi also.
so you know, so to be that Arjun of entrepreneurship, you need to know these skills. And I realized that I need time. I need to learn these skills. Uh, so that's when I thought, okay, let me go back. Look, let me get back to corporate. Let me kind of learn things. Let me plan. Let me strategize. Very importantly, as an entrepreneurship, you need to have a financial backup. Okay, don't expect that the day you start working, you will start getting assignments and you know things are good. for that one assignment to come in, we need the kind of effort that goes in is for 2 months, 3 months, at times years also.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that financial backup is extremely important. You need to have a strategy in place. So this couple of years,
Hmm.
I was reaching out to people. I kept myself active on all the platforms. I continued learning. I was meeting
Hmm.
people. So I think December 2019 is when I decided I need to step out now, because somewhere I was not getting that satisfaction of working in a full-time role, because I knew that I could do a lot more maybe as an individual. Yeah. So December till July, I started planning and strategizing. What do I need to do? What kind of audience will I need to reach out to? What kind of services that we're going to be offering? And the preparation started from there. And I think July, I moved out, and I think from that time onwards, I have been busy. With God's grace, work has been coming in. I've got some amazing friends like you, who have been supportive and referring me to clients.
Thank
Thankfully,
you.
my open workshops. I mean, I don't have to. The struggle is there, but it's never happened that I don't get the kind of participants that I'm expecting. So
Hmm.
I've been that way. I think I'm blessed. Uh, so it was a strategic move, and I don't think there is any harm in saying that no, I'm leaving entrepreneurship and going back. Entrepreneurship is not like you are. Uh, there's a misconception that just because you're an entrepreneur, you're independent, you're brave, and you're a lion. No, okay, it's all about what you want to do. If there is a strategic roadmap that you have, and if going back to an organization and
Hmm.
picking up some skills, some competencies, some learnings from there, and then coming back is a part of your plan, please go ahead and do it. Yeah. But that strategy is important. You need to know what you want to do, what is your niche, and invest accordingly. I see a lot of trainers, when they step in, they really don't know what they have to do, so they will end up doing all kind of certifications. Yeah.
Hmm.
So learning is important, but then be focused. So there is something which is need to have. So I need to have these certifications, and then there is something which is good to have. So you need to be very
Hmm.
clear what is the need to have and what is the good to have. Okay, so run behind that need to have learnings, credentials, certifications, and good to have is okay. If I have the time, if I have the money, I will do this certificate or I'll learn these things. So, so I think there were challenges in both the roles that I played. Obviously, a lot of times, even now, I feel कि यार क्यों मैं आ गया वापस? I think job was better, monthly salary आ रहा था. But then when I look back and I say that was the only thing which really excited me, and that used to get over by the
Hmm.
10th of every month when your EMIs
Yeah.
and everything used to go. I guess now, if you ask me, the satisfaction that I'm getting and the kind of work that I'm doing, it is more satisfying and gives more joy
Hmm.
than what I had when I was working. And again, that's again my personal perspective. I mean, there's no universal rule for it.
Hmm. So I guess, I mean, it's a very nice thought that you actually brought out, that it's not about being R ya par. I mean, it's always, as long as it's a logical, calculated move, I guess you have to sometimes take the hard decision and say, yes, it makes more sense to be on a particular side. So that's great learning. So one general question for you now. Uh, are you affiliated with a lot of groups, and do groups really help you as an individual?
Yes, Elroy. I think, like I said, I was able to develop myself or explore myself only when I got associated with AOT and then ITC. So a big thank you to Monica Kaushik for introducing me to Asif. And I think then there was no looking back. So, and I never ever exit from any group. Okay,
Okay.
though I might not be as vocal as I am on Learners Conclave or as active as I am on IF, but I think being a part of a fraternity always helps. Uh, how it helps? One, you are able to connect with people on an official platform. I would suggest people to take up roles over there. Okay, ultimately we are all there to earn money. Yeah. But then when you are doing something for that platform, you are getting visibility for which you don't have to pay. At the same time, you're learning a lot of things, right? So
Hmm.
when you say that being a part of a group, then it's not about just paying that annual membership or whatever and just being there like a mute spectator. That is not what being a part of a group is. How active are you? How are you contributing to
Hmm.
others? Okay, or what kind of questions are you asking? How are you being yourself? You need to have that identity. You need to have that identity. Okay, people need to know you. But today, the moment I when I go to some meeting, when I say Ganesh Dalvi, oh, Vela thought.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that was a strategic identity that I created for myself because I wanted people to know me that way, right? So
Hmm.
just being in the group, Elroy, is not going to help. Other very important
True.
thing is don't expect the group to do something for you. Okay, it's a platform. Just because I'm paying membership to IAF, I don't expect IAF to come to my house and train me, or I don't expect a learners conclave to come and give me business. Okay, today you or Asif might refer me to a client, but then am I justifying myself? Okay,
Hmm.
or if they go to ask three other trainers that Asif and Elroy has referred Ganesh, is it good? What will these three trainers talk about me?
Very true.
So you might be
So,
good. How are you showing it to the world? Okay, and that's something I tell my mentees also, that boss, you are good. Does the world know about it? I see people will post in their own groups. Many a training kiya. Baba, we know you are good. There is a whole world outside. Put it on Facebook. Put it on all the platforms, all social media
hmm.
platforms where you think your audience is. Okay, and so one question that I ask my do we have time?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So one question that I ask my mentees is, or the task that I give them is, tomorrow people would need to come up with top three trainers in your city or in India. Would your name feature in the top three or top five? Okay, that is where I would like to see you.
Hmm.
So does it mean you have to be the best in that skill? Not really. You don't have to be number one, but then it's okay being number two or number three. But then, do people know you? So one is you need to work on your skill. So one of my general managers to say, know-how is important, Ganesh, but show-how is extremely important. You use
Beautiful.
these platforms as a medium to reach out to people, connect with people. Most messages that I see, I need this for PowerPoint, or I need this help, or which is good. I mean, the groups are made for you to seek help, but how much are you really reaching out to people and talking them one on one? I usually make it
Hmm.
a point to, if somebody's birthday or somebody's done well, as much as possible, I send a message on their personal window. Okay, and that has really helped me a lot. It has helped
Hmm.
me get in participant because that triggers conversation. So what do
True.
you do? Yeah, and that is
Hmm.
where you would probably position your product or your services that you're offering, rather than putting in those 10 posters or 10 flyers every day. That is not going to get you business. It actually becomes irritating. Yeah.
Okay. So we are kind of short of time, so I'll have
Okay.
to cut you here, unfortunately. The last question, three learnings that you would like to pass on to a trainer, someone who's a new entrant. Three learnings that you've had over the time that you've been at work, freelancing. Three learnings.
So three learnings I think would be, first would definitely be connect. Okay, today I
Mm-hmm.
can proudly say that I have people in my phone list. I just need to call up and say that, hey, I need you for a session, or I need this material, or I need these props, and I've done that. And I've people have actually come to my house and they have delivered it. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
are you able to develop that kind of connect? Okay, you need to have. I remember Asif writing something, that close circle. Yeah, do you have that kind of people who will be there for you unconditionally to help you out? For
Hmm.
that, you need to stand by them unconditionally.
Very
That's
true.
one. Second is, have that learning attitude. Okay, so two things I'm shameless about, Elroy. One is eating, and one is
Mm-hmm.
learning. I mean, bhook laga to khane ka, and that hunger for learning has to be always there. So in McDonald's, we had a saying by Ray Kroc, which is when you are green, you grow. When you are ripe, you rot. So
Hmm.
we need to remain green always. Be childlike. Be curious. Ask questions.
Mhm.
Yeah. And the third thing which I learned in my entrepreneurial stint is the more you give, the more you get. That is what will help you, especially
Mhm.
in today's time. Okay, so rather than thinking about how much will I get from this person, ask how much can I give to this person, what can I do to make this person make his life better, but don't spoon feed. Don't that is going to spoil the other person.
Hmm.
Be there, support the person, but don't make it too easy for them. So I think learning, connect, and the attitude of giving, three things
Giving.
is something which has really got me to where I am today. And
All right, great. And so, Ganesh, on this note, I guess we will have to wind up this
uh,
evening's conversation. As I mean, as informed earlier, it has been a great conversation, and there's
thank
so
you
much
so
that
much.
I have learned, and I'm sure even our viewers would have had really lots and lots to actually learn from this discussion.
Thank you
So
so much.
thank
Thank
you
you so
very
much.
much. And also like to inform all of you, any new trainers, potential trainers, if you have any questions about establishing yourself as a trainer in the industry, tomorrow we start off with a session that is going to happen on the first Sunday of each month, and that is known as Ask Asif.
Ask Asif.
So I'll see you all tomorrow at 11 a.m. All right. We are going to go live on the Facebook page of Learners Conclave itself. Looking forward to have all of you there too. If you have any questions, please feel free to post it either on our Facebook page, LinkedIn page, or maybe if you have Asif's number, if you have my number, please feel free to connect on any of the groups. You are more than welcome. So thank you very much, Ganesh, once again at yet another wonderful session of a conversation that I'm sure has impacted.
Thank you
So
so much.
thank you
Thank you
very
so much,
much.
also.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks.
you
Take care.
and good
Night.
night.
Stay safe. Bye bye.